In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen.
So, yes, it does seem like a funny word to us, Pantocrator, because it's a Greek word, so it sounds a little foreign to us. But the reason that we end up using this funny word, instead of just saying Almighty, or some of the other ways that the word is translated, it has the meaning of like all-powerful, the ruler of all. But for some reason, we usually end up leaving that word untranslated, and that's because there's not a really perfect equivalent in English to capture what this word means in the original Greek. We've mentioned some of the common ways that it's translated, Almighty being the most common, but I think the reason that we leave it the way it is, the thing that these words don't really capture, is that Pantocrator is not just, those other words, they're all adjectives. They're words that describe a person or a thing, right? Let's think back to our grammar lessons, right? They're adjectives. Pantocrator is not just an adjective, it's a title, right? It's saying something about who God is, not just describing him. It's something about God's very identity, that he is Pantocrator, that Christ is the Pantocrator. And I think those other words also don't quite capture that, those other words seem to suggest that someone is just a possessor of power. Like that power is just a quality that belongs to that person. Like a king. You might say this, or a dictator is almighty in a sense. They're all powerful. It's a quality that belongs to them. But when we really use that word to refer to God, we're not just saying he possesses the quality of power. We're saying it's about his identity and that he is the source, not just the possessor of power, but in fact the source of all power, the originator of all power. So this is what we mean, the Almighty, the Pantocrator. The word in the original Greek is used only 10 times in the scriptures, strangely enough, once in 2 Corinthians and the rest of the times in the book of Revelation. So we'll be reading that later this week. So power is a funny thing. Sometimes it's described as the most addictive drug, in a sense. It's a powerful addiction in some cases, that when people get a taste of power, when they experience it, when they have it, they don't want to let go of it. And often they want more of it. That's why in many places around the world, the idea that there would be a peaceful transition of power from one leader to another or from one group to another is still considered kind of an amazing thing when it happens. Because people don't want to let go of power once they have it. And we've heard the term absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? Power, we think of it as something that tends to corrupt whoever has it, whoever possesses it. It tends to change them for the worse. But when we talk about the power of God, God is obviously not like that in either of those ways. Even though he is almighty, he is omnipotent, all-powerful, he is the ruler of all, he doesn't hold power with a tight fist. He doesn't hoard up power for himself. On the contrary, we're going to talk about tonight a little bit, is that in a mysterious way, instead of holding all power to himself, God, the Pantocrator, in fact, shares his power with us. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. The Pantocrator who shares his power with us, the all-powerful God. So as creatures with free will, we have the power to make choices, to make decisions that shape our lives, that shape the lives of people around us, that in fact shape the world around us. Human beings are not robots. God has given us power. The freedom to make choices is power. 2 Timothy 1:7 says that God has given us a spirit of power. And this is evident in the fact that we have free will. And this understanding that God has given us power, authority in this sense, in some sense, this is essential to understanding human beings, like the nature of what it means to be human, created in the image of God. From the beginning, God says, the book of Genesis, God gave humans dominion over the earth and power over creation. He has given us dominion. And the coolest example of this, in my opinion, is that God gave Adam the power to name all of the animals. Isn't that why did he do that? Isn't that such a cool thing? And it says that God brought the animals to Adam to see what he would call them. Just that image is so amazing. Why would God do that? St. John Chrysostom, in his commentary on that passage, says that God did that in order to demonstrate that he had given Adam the power and dominion over creation, to allow him to have this authority, to make this decision in a sense, or to see what he would call them. God is demonstrating that he has given us the power and dominion in the world. He's given us this freedom of choice in a sense. And to illustrate this even further, in the 11th hour gospel tonight that we just heard, Christ gives us a beautiful image of this, the way that he shares his power with us. He says, let's just read briefly. Christ says, "It is like a man going to a faraway country who left his house and gave authority to his servants and to each his work and commanded the doorkeeper to watch." Okay, right? So we have this beautiful image. The master of the house, who we're comparing to God, obviously, he has the power. The master of the house has the power. He went away, went on a trip, went out of town for a couple of weeks, so to speak. And as he went away, he gave authority to his servants. He gave power to his servants in his stead. He shared his power with them, to his servants, which we can think of as us. And to each servant he gave, his work to do, it says in the gospel, and commanded the doorkeeper to watch. That's the doorkeeper's job, right? Now, he gave each person, each servant, their task. And presumably, the master of the house would want each of the servants to use this power that he had given them to keep things going just as well as they would if the master of the house was there, right? The master wants his servants to use this power, this authority he's given them, to do the work that they're commanded to do, just as if the master of the house was still there, that nothing would change. In fact, if you go away and you give someone, let's say, you have pet fish, okay? And you go away on a trip and you want someone to take care of your fish. You want them to take care of them, to take care of your pet with just as much care as you would do. As if you want them to treat that, use your power, your authority in that way, to treat the animal just as if, it was you doing it yourself, right? So the master of the house wants the servants to use that power just as he himself would do. So God, the Pantocrator, has shared his power with us. And we might be excited by that. I mean, that's it's crazy. It's mind-blowing. We might be excited by that. We might say, I'm going to be a good doorkeeper, man. He put me in charge. He left me in charge. I'm going to use this power, this choice, this free will that he has given me to do things just as he would. I'm going to use that power just as the master of the house would. So let's now examine how God himself uses his power. What kind of power does our Pantocrator possess? Looking at Revelation, which is where this term is used most, as we said. In Revelation 5, we have this image of the scroll with 7 seals. And St. John says he weeps because there's no one found who can open the scroll. And the angel says, don't cry. The Lion of Judah is worthy and able and powerful to open the scroll. And St. John looks, you're imagining the Lion of Judah, the one who's capable of doing what no one else can do. And the lion is a lamb who has been slain, who's been killed. This powerful figure that's described looks to St. John like a lamb who has been killed. This doesn't seem like a powerful figure to us. This isn't the type of power that we're used to, but this is the power of God. This is the power of the Pantocrator. His power is used in love and in sacrifice, not in wielding power in a kind of a flippant way, like we picture a powerful person sometimes. The ruler of all was so humble and loving that he became a human being. He became incarnate in order to save us. He suffered to deliver us, we say in the liturgy. He suffered. He suffered. Why did he suffer? For us, out of love. This is the kind of power that our God has, even to the point of death on a cross. So, just to finish up, if we want to use our power the same way that the master of the house would, if we want to do our job well and wield the power that has been shared with us in the same way, how can we do that? We'll look at 3 qualities of how to wield this power. We must be humble to wield this power. Philippians 2, which apparently was read yesterday as well, we'll read it again. Philippians 2, 5 through 8. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God did not consider it robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, taking the form of a bondservant, and coming in the likeness of men. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. Why does he do this again? Out of humility. A humble God almost seems like an oxymoron to us. I mean, I think this is unique in Christianity, the idea that our God, the all-powerful Pantocrator, is humble, that our God is humble. It's truly amazing that this is the character of God, and it's really worthy of note. And if God himself, the all-powerful ruler of all, Pantocrator, is humble, what excuse do we have to not be humble, right? In wielding our power, in wielding our choice, we must have humility. Second, we must be obedient. We just read in that verse 2 that Christ became obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. And Christ is continually referencing in the gospel. He's saying that he's doing the will of his Father. He emphasizes very frequently that he is being obedient to the Father. He is really, he emphasized that in there's many verses you could point to. And this is the example for us. For us, power without obedience, power without being reined in, is very dangerous. Power like that can wrongly lead us to believe that we are like the Pantocrator, that we are God, that we are the masters of our own ship to an extent. We get really caught up in it. We read in the 9th hour the prophecy from Hosea. God is, through Hosea, is telling the Israelites, you're in trouble because you have eaten the fruit of deception, for you have hoped in your own chariots and in the abundance of your own power. Right? So without obedience, power is not reined in. So humble, obedient. And lastly, we must use this power in love if we want to be like the master of the house. The Pantocrator uses his power to save us out of his immense and unfathomable love, right? Most people use power to preserve themselves and to save themselves. They build walls, to keep themselves secure. But whereas other people use power to save themselves, God uses his power to save us. He doesn't hoard up his power for himself, and we must also use our power in this way also. We love and make sacrifice for others. This is the way that the master of the house wields his power. So, those are the three ways: humility, obedience, and love. And all of this we must do without ceasing. To make it a little bit harder. We must do all of this without ceasing. There's no room for laziness or breaks. The continuation of that 11th hour gospel, the story of the master of the house, Christ says, "Watch therefore, for you do not know when the master of the house is coming, in the evening, at midnight, at the crowing of the rooster, or in the morning, lest, coming suddenly, he find you sleeping. And what I say to you, I say to all, watch." Watch, Christ says. So, we don't know when we will be called to account for how we have used the power that God has given each one of us. Did we use it in humility? Did we use it in obedience? Did we use it in love, as the master of the house does? So Christ says, watch, and that is the challenge of this week. That is an opportunity we have this week to show up and be watchful without ceasing. The master of the house, the Pantocrator, is coming soon, and even now he is at the door. Glory be to God forever. Amen.